Hey guys, well, if you're brave enough to press play, let's begin. Tonight we slip into the damp, torchlit alleys of medieval Europe, where your fate takes a sharp, shadowy turn. The heavy mist clings to your skin like a cold To be honest, you probably won't survive this. So, before the lights go out, click like and subscribe, but only if you're brave enough to return tomorrow night. Post your location and local time in the comments, so we know where our midnight travelers are tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan, because silence makes this story worse. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're nobody, really. Just another desperate soul trying to scrape by in a world that barely cares if you live or die. The city reeks of human waste and rotting fish. The streets churn with beggars and brawlers, and every noble struts around like they invented the sun. But tonight, your life shifts. You feel the heavy hand clamp your shoulder. A silent figure, face hidden under a hood, motions you into a narrow passage. Your heart skips. Rumours have swirled in the taverns for years. A secret brotherhood that operates beyond kings and priests, controlling fates from the shadows. They say joining them offers power, purpose, and gold. But mostly, they say it's a one-way trip you follow. Because, let's face it, what else do you have? Your stomach growls, your debts grow larger, and the city's watchmen already have your name circled on too many lists. Inside the cramped chamber, the torchlight throws wild, twitching shadows across the stone walls. 3 figures sit behind a crude wooden table, their faces veiled. The one in the centre speaks, voice like gravel sliding down a mountainside. "We've seen your skills," he says, "thieving, escaping, surviving." You nod, trying to appear braver than you feel. Your shirt sticks to your back with sweat. You want to live a life of purpose. Do you? Honestly, you just want a hot meal and a roof. But sure, purpose sounds better. You nod again. Know this. The leader leans forward. Once you enter our ranks, there is no leaving. Your mouth dries. They're not kidding. People disappear into this brotherhood like pebbles tossed into a well. Historians still argue whether these groups operated as a unified order, or if dozens of splinter cells roamed independently. But one thing's certain, secrecy was their lifeblood. You're handed a crude iron coin, stamped with a strange symbol, a hooded figure holding a dagger crossed with a quill. You flip it nervously in your palm. This isn't a welcome gift, it's a mark. From this moment, you belong to them. Another voice speaks from the shadows, a woman this time. You'll train, you'll prove yourself, and if you fail, she lets the silence say what everyone's thinking. You're led through twisting tunnels beneath the city. The air grows damp and foul, thick with mildew and rat droppings. Somewhere nearby, water drips rhythmically, like a clock counting down your fate. As you walk, your guide whispers bits of instruction, warning you of the days ahead. Some joined us willingly, others less so, she says, but all learned quickly that hesitation is deadly. The deeper you go, the more unsettling it becomes. Strange symbols scrawled on walls, tiny alcoves filled with melted candles and odd trinkets. Bones, feathers, even dried herbs tied with twine. You don't ask questions. You're starting to understand rule number 1, never ask questions. Historians still debate whether these underground networks were truly as extensive as the legends suggest, or if many of the stories were embellished by terrified townsfolk and suspicious authorities. But here, knee-deep in murky puddles, it feels very real. Finally, you reach a large cavern lit by a ring of flickering torches. Several recruits stand at attention, silent as statues. Some glance at you with pity, others with envy, like they're sizing up fresh meat. In the centre stands a small stone pedestal with an odd object on it, a vial filled with dark, swirling liquid. "Your first test," your guide says softly. "A test?" You swallow hard. What kind of test involves swirling black liquid? "The poison trial," she explains almost gently. "You'll drink. If you live, you've passed." Your legs turn to jelly. This is insane. They want you to willingly swallow poison. But you notice something odd. A small wooden bowl filled with crushed herbs beside the pedestal. It's not as simple as drinking, she continues. You must identify the antidote, use the wrong mixture, and your trial ends. You step forward, heart hammering. The other recruits watch with eerie calm. You recognize one herb instantly. Wormwood, used for centuries in various tinctures. Another looks like ground chamomile, easy enough, but two others baffle you completely. Your mind races. You remember your old neighbour, the apothecary, who once mumbled drunkenly about wheat root calming bitter hearts. That must be licorice root. You hastily mix your antidote, praying you're right. The vial feels heavy in your shaking hand. You tip it back. The liquid burns down your throat like hot tar. For a moment, nothing happens. Then your stomach flips. Sweat pours down your forehead, and your vision swims. You nearly collapse, but the nausea subsides. The antidote works. Barely. The woman nods. You live. For now. Behind you, someone whispers, "We lost 2 last week." Welcome to the Brotherhood. Your legs are still unsteady as they shove you into the next chamber. The air is cooler here, though it does little to ease the sweat clinging to your skin. You catch glimpses of others' humbly hooded figures observing from corners, silent judges deciding if you're worth the risk. The trial isn't over. That poison was merely the appetizer. Now comes the real initiation, where your mind, body, and will are dismantled piece by piece. You're stripped of your clothes. They toss you a rough linen tunic, barely enough to cover you from the chill. Modesty isn't a concern down here. Dignity? That went out the door when you drank the poison. To be honest, you're beginning to suspect you made a terrible mistake. The trainer steps forward, a wiry man with sharp eyes and a voice like snapping twigs. "We will break you," he says simply, "because only when you are broken can you be rebuilt." His name is Brother Gaul, though you're pretty sure that's not his real name. None of them use real names here. "Names give power to your enemies," he explains. "You are nothing. You are no one." The trials begin immediately. Sleep deprivation is the first torment. For 3 days they keep you awake, shoving you between rooms, barking questions, testing your memory, your loyalty, your endurance. The room spins constantly, and at one point you swear you see your grandmother floating in the corner. She's not there, of course. Probably. "Who are you?" Brother Ghoul demands for the 100th time. "No one," you croak. "And who do you serve?" "The Brotherhood." Louder. You shout it, though your voice cracks like dry wood. Satisfied for the moment, Gaul moves on. On the second night, they bind your wrists and suspend you just inches from the cold, wet stone floor. Your muscles burn. Every shift in weight sends sharp stabs down your shoulders. They leave you hanging there for hours, whispering prayers, songs, and threats around you. One recruit, younger than you, screams endlessly in a nearby cell. You never see him again. Historians still argue whether these initiation rituals were entirely about loyalty, or whether they also served a sadistic purpose, reminding new assassins of their expendability. Either way, it works. You feel small, helpless, completely in their control. By the 4th day, you're permitted a few precious hours of sleep, only to be jolted awake for physical tests. They throw you into hand-to-hand combat with fellow recruits. No rules, no mercy. You're not allowed to speak. Every punch you take echoes inside your aching skull. You bleed from your nose, lip, and a gash near your temple. One recruit, a towering brute with a crooked nose, lunges at you with wild fury. You duck, pure instinct, and land a lucky punch to his throat. He crumples, gasping like a fish pulled from water. The others drag him away wordlessly. You don't see him again either. A few hours later, you're sitting cross-legged in a small chamber. The room is filled with strange objects. A caged raven, polished stones, a row of bizarre masks, and a bowl of black sand. A woman with silver thread hair sits across from you. She smiles faintly. You've survived, she says, but survival isn't enough. You must become invisible. This is the psychological part of the initiation. They want to scrub away the last traces of your old life. She asks you about your past, your family, your friends, your regrets. You try to answer, but she stops you. Forget them, she says softly. They are already dead to you. You shiver, though the room is warm. The way she says it feels like a promise, not a metaphor. A surprising twist in your trial arrives when they teach you about codes and signals. Turns out, secretive as they are, the Brotherhood communicates constantly through hand gestures, coloured ribbons tied to doors, and even patterns of candle placement. Quirky, yes. Effective. One wrong candle, that might signal an ambush. Historians still debate whether such elaborate signalling was necessary or just a paranoia-fueled art form, but here it's gospel. On the 6th night, they bring you into a circular chamber, with strange symbols painted across the stone walls. Hooded elders sit in a circle, chanting in a language you don't recognize. A small table holds a silver dagger, its blade intricately etched. Brother Gaul steps forward again. Your final test, he says. You must offer blood. You hesitate for just a moment, long enough to see his eyebrow twitch. Bad sign. So you act quickly, slicing a shallow line across your palm and letting the blood drip into a small stone bowl. The chanting stops. The elders rise. One of them speaks, voice low but clear. You are now one with the shadows. You will take no orders but ours. You will live and die for the Brotherhood. The dagger is pressed into your hand, not as a gift, but as a permanent obligation. You are escorted to your new sleeping quarters, if you can call it that. It's barely more than a stone cell with a thin straw mat. Your entire world has shrunk to these damp walls and flickering torches. The door clanks shut behind you. For the first time in days, you finally sleep. But even in sleep, there's no real peace. Your dreams are vivid and terrifying. Faces of recruits who didn't make it, echoes of screaming, visions of endless tunnels where you're always one step behind a shadowy figure who keeps slipping away. To be honest, you're starting to wonder if surviving the initiation was actually the lucky outcome. You wait to the sound of dripping water. That steady, hollow plunk echoes in your skull like a drumbeat you can't escape. Your body aches. Every joint feels twisted from days of torture and trial. But you're alive, and in this world, that's already a small victory. The door creaks open. Brother Gaul stands there, arms folded. Up, he barks. Time to begin your life. Life. That's generous. What you're entering now is less life, more survival, with flair. The romantic idea you may have once had about being a mysterious assassin in the shadows, yeah, you can forget that right now. You're led into the main underground hall, your new home. Dozens of recruits and full members bustle around in near silence, weaving between racks of weapons, shelves of herbs, and long tables filled with maps and scrolls. The walls are damp, streaked with black mould. A thin mist hangs in the air like bad breath. The stench, a charming combination of sweat, mildew, and the faint sourness of unwashed bodies. There's no fresh air down here, ever. You start to realize why so many of the older assassins have hollow eyes and permanent coughs. Your personal sleeping chamber. It's still that tiny cell with a straw mat, but at least they give you a thin blanket now. Luxury. You'll learn to savour the small victories. As you're shown around, one of the older members, Sister Ansel, leans in with a wry grin. Welcome to the shadows, little moth. The first rule, trust no one. You force a weak smile, but her warning sticks, and quickly you see why. Food is scarce. Every meal is a fight for the best scraps. Dry bread, thin stew that tastes suspiciously like boiled socks, the occasional slab of dried meat if someone up top remembered to send provisions. Water? Technically drinkable. Barely. You swear you see something wriggling in your cup once, but you gulp it down anyway. Dehydration is worse. Even sleeping is dangerous. Recruits whisper about sudden disappearances. Someone takes your food. You can't retaliate unless you want to wake up with a blade at your throat. You sleep with one eye open, your dagger tucked under the thin blanket. Every creak of the stone corridor outside your cell door keeps your nerves sizzling. Historians still argue whether medieval assassin guilds truly operated like this, perpetually paranoid, feeding off their own members' fear, or whether these accounts were exaggerated by frightened chroniclers trying to demonize them. But down here, he's quite here living it, and there's nothing exaggerated about the tension. Of course, there's also the matter of language. The Brotherhood uses an entire coded dialect, a blend of local tongues, hand signs, and obscure phrases designed to keep outsiders confused. You start learning the basics. The crow nests at dusk means a successful kill. The candle burns unevenly warns of betrayal. And a simple touch of 2 fingers to the temple, that means watch your back. Sister Ansel becomes your reluctant mentor. She's sharp, sarcastic, and probably more dangerous than anyone here, but she seems amused by your naivety. Rule number 2, she whispers as you walk the stone halls. The Brotherhood is family, but every family has someone who wants your seat at the table. You laugh nervously. She doesn't. You pass by several chambers you're not yet allowed to enter. One has heavy iron doors bolted shut. Behind it, strange chants hum like bees trapped in stone. Another room smells strongly of sulfur and something metallic. Alchemy? Poison labs? You don't ask. And then there's the vault, the most tightly guarded space. The Brotherhood's secrets live in there. Contracts, blackmail records, even relics from past missions. Rumor has it one scroll contains detailed leverage on half the noble families in the region. Historians debate whether such vaults actually existed or whether this is just lore passed down to romanticize their power. But watching heavily armed guards stationed outside that door, you get the feeling the rumors aren't far off. One night, Sister Ansel drags you into the training yard. Dim chamber lit by oil lamps swinging gently from chains. Time to see if you can actually move like a shadow, she says. Or if you're just another sack of clumsy bones. You spend hours learning how to walk silently, how to roll without breaking bones, how to melt into doorways and blend into crowds. It's not graceful at first. You trip, you bark your shin, you knock over a rack of throwing knives once, drawing a round of muffled chuckles from other recruits. Real graceful. Ansel sighs dramatically. You're about as stealthy as a cow in a bell tower. But you improve. Slowly. Each mistake is met with swift correction. Sometimes a cuff to the head, sometimes worse. The Brotherhood doesn't tolerate incompetence for long. Then come the lock-picking lessons. You sit hunched over crude practice locks for hours, sweat dripping into your eyes as you fumble with tiny picks. Your hands cramp. Once, in frustration, you slam the lock against the table. Ansel calmly resets it. Patience, she says. A lock speaks. You need to listen. You start hearing those tiny clicks, the faint, delicate whispers of pins shifting. By your 4th week, you can open most practice locks in under a minute. A small victory, but one that makes Ansel nod approvingly for the first time. Late one evening, as you sit polishing your newly assigned dagger, you overhear 2 senior assassins whispering near the vault entrance. The words are quiet, but a phrase sticks out. The bishop's price is rising. The bishop? Religious figures involved? Historians often debate just how complicit the church was with these secret orders. Some claim church leaders employed assassins to eliminate threats discreetly. Others insist they were mortal enemies, hunting each other in a centuries-long dance of power and hypocrisy. You're starting to believe both might be true. Life here is a cycle of training, whispers, and survival. You feel your old self slipping away, a necessary shedding of skin. The person who walked into this stone labyrinth barely exists now. And the truth is finally sinking in. Escaping this life won't ever be an option. You either succeed and rise, or you vanish like so many before you. The Brotherhood leaves no loose ends. The days blur together now. Sleep, train, eat, or attempt to eat, and repeat. But today feels different. There's a tension in the air as you're led deeper into the tunnels, into a chamber you haven't seen before. The ceiling is higher here, carved into a jagged dome. Long wooden racks line the stone walls, filled with weapons, some familiar, some bizarre. Welcome to the armory. Sister Ansel greets you with a mischievous smirk. Time to meet your best friends. You're handed a short dagger first. The blade is simple, but wickedly sharp, polished to a gleam. Your most loyal tool, Ansel says. If you lose this, you lose your head. You grip it, feeling its weight. Not too heavy, not too light. You'll be expected to carry it hidden at all times. She shows you where. Strapped under the forearm, sewn into your boot, tucked inside a false belt buckle. The Brotherhood takes concealment very seriously. Now the fun part, she adds. Poisons. A low wooden table in the centre of the chamber holds a dozen tiny vials, each one labelled with odd symbols you don't recognise. The smell hits you first. A mix of sweet honey, sharp vinegar, and something faintly metallic that makes your... Ansel gestures toward the vials. One drop can end a king. Or you, if you're not careful. You lean in as she picks up one small bottle filled with thick, dark liquid. Nightshade extract, he says softly. Fast-acting, but tricky. Too much, and it'll discolour the victim's mouth. Instant suspicion. Get the dose right, though, and they drift off as if falling asleep. She lifts another vial, this one cloudy and pale yellow. This one? Monkshood. They'll feel fine for an hour. Then the chest tightens, breath slows, and... You try to remember everything, but it's overwhelming. Dozens of toxins, each with its quirks. Too much heat spoils some. Too much light ruins others. One wrong ingredient, and you're not just ineffective, you're dead. Historians still argue how advanced these medieval poisoners truly were. Some suggest they blended science with superstition, while others believe certain formulas were terrifyingly sophisticated for the era. Either way, you're not comforted. Don't worry, Ansel adds with a dry chuckle. You'll practice on rats first. You glance at a row of small cages against the far wall. Tiny squeaks fill the room. The Brotherhood may be ruthless, but they aren't complete idiots. Testing on recruits directly? That only happens when they really don't like you. You spend days in the poison lab, carefully mixing, observing, adjusting. The process is tedious, but oddly mesmerizing. Crushed roots, distilled oils, powdered minerals, all combined like some twisted form of cooking. And yes, one recruit accidentally poisoned himself last week. He's still recovering, mostly. But poisons aren't your only curriculum. The Brotherhood's training covers every dirty skill imaginable. You're shown how to hide blades in food baskets, how to climb stone walls with crude hooks, and how to silently slit a purse string for a throat. Then comes a truly bizarre lesson. Yes, pigeons. You're led into a small chamber filled with dozens of cooing birds. Ansel, barely hiding her amusement, explains, couriers. Fast, discreet, untraceable, unless you're smart enough to intercept them. You watch as she ties a tiny scroll to a bird's leg and releases it into a narrow shaft, leading up to the city above. There's a whole network, she continues. Pigeons, coded messages, dead drops hidden in markets. Sometimes even theatre performers pass our secrets through subtle stage signals. You blink, trying to picture a medieval actor waving his hand a certain way to signal an assassination contract. It sounds absurd, and yet it works. Historians still debate whether such elaborate courier systems actually existed, or whether they've been romanticized in novels and folklore. But standing here, surrounded by cooing messengers, you see the brilliance of it. By your third week in the armory, you're introduced to more exotic weapons. Throwing knives, garrots, even blowpipes with tiny barbed darts. One device catches your eye. A small crossbow, no bigger than your forearm. Silent but deadly, Ansel says, loading a tiny bolt, perfect for short-range kills when a dagger isn't an option. She hands it to you. The tension is high. You aim at a straw dummy, breath held, and release. The bolt thunks into the dummy's neck with surprising force. You exhale slowly. Ansel nods. See? You might just survive after all. You're also trained in escape techniques, how to dislocate your thumb to slip out of restraints, how to create distraction fires using simple oils, how to make a makeshift grappling hook with nothing but a belt and some broken chair legs. You practice until your hands blister. Night after night you collapse into your straw mat, exhausted, but sharper, harder. The hunger gnaws at your gut, but you barely notice it now. Pain has become normal. Then one evening, as you're heading back to your chamber, you overhear whispers again, this time between two high-ranking members. Payment from the Merchant Guild arrived today. We'll strike before the solstice. The Merchant Guild? You didn't realize your Brotherhood took contracts from everyone. Not just kings and warlords, but common merchants too. Historians still argue whether medieval assassin guilds operated independently, or were sometimes little more than hired muscle for the rich. Hearing these whispers, you're starting to believe the latter might be true. Ansel appears beside you, almost startling you out of your skin. Eavesdropping, are we? You try to stammer a reply, but she simply grins. Good. Curiosity is dangerous, but sometimes it's also useful. Just know when to keep your mouth shut. The next morning, you're handed a sealed scroll. Your first assignment. No killing, not yet. But it's a test. A small task to deliver a message, collect information, and return unseen. Simple on paper. And yet, as you tuck the scroll beneath your tunic and step into the narrow stone tunnel leading toward the surface, your stomach knots. Because for the first time since you arrived, you're leaving the safety of these suffocating walls. Out there, in the real world, everyone's a threat. The tunnel gradually slopes upward, the air growing slightly less oppressive with each step, though it still smells like damp stone and old secrets. You can almost feel the weight of the entire city pressing down above you. Finally, after what feels like an eternity of cramped, silent climbing, you reach a small wooden hatch. The Brotherhood's handler waits for you. Remember the route. Speak to no one. Make eye contact with no one. You are the wind. You nod, swallowing hard. Easy for him to say. He's not the one stepping into the open where failure means much more than a stern lecture. The hatch creaks open, and you slip out into an alley you don't recognize. The sky above is a dull grey, morning fog curling between crooked timber buildings. The city is already stirring, vendors chasing each other through narrow streets, and the occasional city guard stomping by in his gleaming breastplate, already looking bored. Your heart pounds. After weeks in the Brotherhood's suffocating tunnels, this open space feels foreign. Even the air tastes different. The sights and smells of the medieval city are overwhelming. Roasting meat, fresh bread, horse droppings steaming in the cool morning air, mingling with fishy market sludge. You instinctively pull your hood lower. You move quickly, careful not to draw attention. The route was drilled into your head all night. Down Parchment Lane, past the fountain shaped like a lion vomiting water, through the spice market, then into the weaver's courtyard. Easy enough. Except, of course, nothing is ever that easy. As you reach the spice market, you encounter your first complication. A wagon has overturned, spilling sacks of grain into the street. Shouting merchants wave their arms, children dart between barrels trying to snatch fallen apples, and two guards stand nearby, lazily watching the chaos unfold. This wasn't part of the plan. You hesitate for only a moment before veering left, weaving through the crowd. A plump merchant waves a stick wildly as a goat nibbles at spilled grain beside him. "Filthy animals, I'll turn you into stew," he bellows. You suppress a nervous smile. Even in this grim world, absurdity thrives. Historians still debate how heavily medieval assassins relied on rigid planning versus spontaneous improvisation. Some argue that real-world conditions forced them to constantly adapt, while others claim their greatest strength was in over-planning every detail. Right now, improvisation is your only option. You duck under a hanging basket of dried peppers and cut through a side alley where laundry flaps above like surrender flags. Rats scurry along the base of the walls, and somewhere nearby, someone coughs a phlegmy, wet rattle. The city breathes in sickness, and you can't help but wonder how anyone survives out here without an underground brotherhood protecting them. Or preying on them. Finally, you spot the Weaver's courtyard. It's quieter here, tucked away from the busy streets. Few women work at wooden looms, rhythmically tapping and pulling threads. The target is easy to identify. An elderly man with a crooked back, hunched over a spindle. You approach slowly, heart pounding, reciting your lines internally. He doesn't even look up as you stand beside him. Instead, he mutters in a gravelly voice, "Clouds gather early this season." You respond exactly as rehearsed, but the rain will not fall until dusk. The code exchange complete, he reaches beneath the pile of yarn beside him and discreetly slips a small pouch into your hand. Inside? You don't check. That's not your business. You bow slightly and turn to leave. So far, so good. But you're only halfway finished. Now comes the hardest part, getting back. As you retrace your steps, you notice something unsettling. A pair of city guards appear behind you, walking at a casual pace. You turn left, so do they. You slow your pace, they match. Your gut twists. Are they following you? It's possible. The Brotherhood warned you about this. Sometimes the city's watch gets a little too curious. Sometimes they suspect you're a courier for smugglers or worse. Of course, they have no idea how much worse. Your mind races. If they stop you, if they search you, if they find the pouch. You spot a group of beggars gathered near the fountain, bowls outstretched, calling to passing merchants. Without hesitation, you approach one. A filthy man with tangled hair and a vacant grin. "Hold this for me," you whisper, slipping the pouch into his bowl. "If you do, there'll be silver in it by sundown." The beggar blinks at you but says nothing. He simply nods, curling his fingers protectively around the pouch. You move on, heart hammering. As expected, the guards eventually catch up. One taps your shoulder roughly. "You there, where you off to?" You keep your voice steady. "Running an errand for my master. He's waiting for fresh goat cheese." The guard sniffs, eyeing you suspiciously. "What's under your cloak?" You open it slowly, revealing nothing but your plain tunic. No pouch, no scroll, just your dagger, barely visible inside your boot, but common enough for self-defense in these parts. The guard grunts. "Move along." You don't need to be told twice. Later that afternoon, you return to the fountain. The beggar is still there, rocking slightly, humming an off-key tune. You sit beside him casually. He glances sideways, and without a word, slips the pouch back into your hand. "Good man," you whisper. You drop a small coin into his bowl, a rare moment of generosity. By sunset, you're back at the hatch, heart still thudding. You knock softly 3 times, pause, then 2 more knocks. The coded signal. The hatch creaks open, and you slip down into the familiar gloom. Inside, Ansel waits. She takes the pouch from you, peeks inside, and nods with a faint smile. You adapted. That's promising. Your shoulders sag with relief. Of course, there's no grand celebration. Just a curt nod from Gaul as you're sent back to your cell. Still, as you lie on your straw mat that night, one thought keeps circling your mind. You passed. Your first mission, small as it was, didn't end in disaster. But this was only a message. Next time, there will be blades involved. And blood. And probably yours. Morning arrives, or at least what passes for morning down here. The underground layer never changes, always damp, always dim, always humming with whispered conversations and muffled footsteps. You can barely remember what real sunlight feels like. But today, you notice something new. A thin strip of brown cloth sits folded neatly on your cot. Your new sash. Ansel appears in the doorway, smirking. Congratulations, you're officially one of us now. Low level, of course, but in the shadows, even that means something. You run your fingers over the coarse fabric. It's a simple thing, but among the Brotherhood, this sash marks your transition from recruit to operative. It also makes you a target, both for enemies outside and for the jealous eyes within. You join the others in the main hall, and for the first time, you notice how many faces you don't recognize. Some of them glance at you with interest, others with quiet disdain. Everyone's always watching, calculating. Your victories are someone else's threat. Breakfast is, as usual, forgettable, a thin porridge with a crust of stale bread. But you force it down. The body needs fuel, even when the mind is busy rehearsing every possible way someone could betray you today. Ansel leans closer as you eat. You'll want to make friends where you can, she whispers, but choose carefully. Every alliance you form makes you stronger and weaker. It sounds like a contradiction. It is a contradiction, but it's true. The Brotherhood is filled with competing agendas. Rivalries fester like open wounds. Historians still argue whether these factions were deliberately cultivated to keep members divided, or whether it was simply human nature at work in a high-stakes environment. Either way, the result is the same: paranoia. Later that day, you're summoned for your next round of training. Disguises. As you step into the dressing chamber, you suppress a laugh. The romance of being a secret assassin rarely includes the reality of itchy wigs, awkward false beards, and face paint that smells suspiciously like old sheep fat. Brother Evo, your disguised instructor, is waiting. He's an older man, with nimble fingers and sharp eyes that miss nothing. You must become anyone, he says. The merchant, the servant, the grieving widow, the drunk. He tosses you a bundle of clothes. Today's assignment: blend in as a travelling peddler. You spend hours in front of a cracked mirror, applying powders, adjusting your gait, altering your speech. Evo critiques relentlessly. Too stiff, more slouch. Your accent is slipping. You're smiling too much. No one trusts a peddler who smiles that much. Eventually, you get it passable. Evo nods. Better. Now lose yourself. That's the hardest part. Becoming someone else isn't about clothes or voice. It's about shedding your own identity entirely. You're not you anymore. Hear whoever the job demands. The Brotherhood's wardrobe is surprisingly extensive. Robes, cloaks, merchant tunics, even stolen guards' uniforms, all meticulously maintained. You spot one outfit that seems completely out of place. A brightly coloured jester's costume, complete with bells. Evo notices your glance and chuckles. You'd be surprised how effective a fool's disguise can be. No one expects the fool to carry a hidden blade. Historians still debate whether assassins actually used such outlandish disguises. Some accounts suggest they occasionally infiltrated noble courts by posing as performers, using distraction to mask their true purpose. The image of a killer lurking behind a painted smile, haunting, yet entirely believable. Of course, disguises aren't just for getting close to targets. They're for getting away afterward too. Escape is as critical as the kill. You're taught how to change appearances quickly, even mid-chase, swapping hats, shedding cloaks, ducking into shadows. A few seconds can mean the difference between vanishing or swinging from a public gallows. The Brotherhood even employs tailors specifically for disguise work. One evening you watch as a young seamstress repairs a hidden blade sheath sewn into a nobleman's sleeve. She works methodically, humming softly. You marvel at the quiet professionalism. Every small role supports the larger machine. But not every detail is so professional. You quickly discover the Brotherhood's sanitation standards leave much to be desired. The dressing chamber reeks of old sweat, wet leather, and that persistent medieval perfume of unwashed bodies mingling with herbs intended to mask the smell, but failing miserably. Your own uniform, a heavy cloak of thick wool, quickly becomes a walking sponge for every odour imaginable. You try not to think about how long it's been since it was last properly cleaned. One night, Ansel chuckles as you peel off your sweat-drenched boots. You'll miss that smell when you're old and retired. You stare at her. People actually retire. She grins, but doesn't answer. That's answer enough. The Brotherhood maintains various safe houses throughout the city, hidden rooms above taverns, behind bakeries, or beneath graveyards. Part of your training involves memorizing their locations and the secret signals marking their entrances. You visit several under Ansel's guidance. One safe house, above a candle shop, offers a rare treat: a bath. The water is tepid, but after weeks of grime it feels like paradise. You scrub layers of dirt from your skin, watching the brown water swirl like ink. This is luxury, Ansel sighs, soaking her feet beside you. Enjoy it. It won't last. Outside, the city bells toll. A curfew approaches. You both rise, dressing quickly, slipping back into your heavy cloaks. With the curfew, you ask. An execution tomorrow, Ansel replies flatly. They always lock down the city before big events. Executions are public spectacles. The Brotherhood watches them closely, not for entertainment, but for information. Who attends? Who weeps? Who smiles? Every reaction reveals loyalties. Historians still argue whether assassins ever used public executions as cover for their own work slipping through distracted crowds to quietly eliminate secondary targets. Some say it happened often. After all, few would notice another corpse in a square already drenched in blood. Back in the main hall, as you prepare for rest, you overhear whispers about tomorrow's execution. One of ours? Loose lips. The bishop's order. The bishop again. His name keeps surfacing, tied to whispered fears and unspoken grudges. You don't ask questions, but you file it away. Connections matter. As you settle onto your straw mat, the damp chill settling into your bones, you stare up at the uneven stone ceiling and wonder how many more days you can survive like this. But deep down, you already know the answer. As many as they allow. You wake to the muffled hum of voices gathering above. The execution square is already filling, even though the sun has barely peeked over the jagged city rooftops. You're not going to the execution as a spectator, of course. You're going as a shadow. Ansel appears at your door, handing you a fresh set of garments. Put these on. We're blending into the crowd today. The disguise is simple but clever. A plain brown tunic, slightly frayed, with a patched wool cap to pull low over your face. Just another poor city dweller, eager for free entertainment. You slip a thin dagger into your boot, mostly out of habit now. As you step into the square, the city's full orchestra of smells assaults you. Warm bread from nearby stalls, the sour tang of spoiled fruit baking in the sun, the unmistakable stench of livestock penned just beyond the crowd, and beneath it all, the heavy, coppery scent of dried blood staining the old wooden platform. People push and jostle for a better view. Children sit on their fathers' shoulders. Street vendors shout over one another, hawking roasted chestnuts, sweetmeats, and boiled wine. It's a festival atmosphere, grotesquely cheery given what everyone's gathered to see. The gallows stand tall in the centre of the square, draped in the city's banner. Ropes sway gently in the breeze. A priest mumbles nearby, flipping through a small leather prayer book. Guards patrol the edges, armoured and sweating under the rising sun. Ansel leans toward you. Keep your eyes open. There's always more happening here than meets the eye. You scan the crowd, noting pockets of interest. A pair of noblemen whispering behind feathered fans. A merchant watching nervously, sweat beading at his temples. And near the front, an official you recognize from one of the Brotherhood's scrolls, his face tight with force indifference. The condemned man is led out, a young recruit, barely older than you. His face is pale but set with grim resolve. You recognize him instantly. His name was whispered only in passing. He failed a mission last week. Now, he's paying for it. Historians still argue whether these executions were truly public warnings for the Brotherhood's own members, or whether they were merely political theatre staged by the city's elite to reassure terrified citizens. Standing here, you sense both motives at play. The executioner, a hulking figure with arms like tree trunks, tightens the nose. The young man's lips move. You can't hear what he says over the murmuring crowd. Then the trapdoor falls. The crowd gasps, some cheer, some weep. The priest drones his rehearsed prayer. The noblemen sip their wine, satisfied. You turn your attention back to the living. That man near the ale cart, Ansel whispers. He's watching the merchant too closely. You glance over. A man in simple garb, face partially hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. He's not watching the execution. He's watching one of the merchant guild leaders standing near the front. A rival assassin. You whisper. Possibly, Ansel replies, or a spy from another faction. The Brotherhood isn't the only secret game in town. Rival guilds, foreign agents, and rogue freelancers all compete for power. Historians debate how often these groups clash directly, but the undercurrent of tension suggests it happened more than people like to admit. The man by the ale cart shifts, casually reaching beneath his cloak. You catch a glimpse of glinting steel. Before you can act, Ansel's hand clamps your wrist. No, she hisses. Watch. Learn. Not our fight. The merchant begins to move away, heading toward a nearby alley. The man follows at a distance, melting into the crowd. You feel your muscles tense. Every instinct screams to intervene, but this isn't your assignment. Not today. The city bells ring out again, signaling the end of the execution. The crowd begins to scatter. Vendors pack up their stalls. Children resume their noisy games. Life resumes, as if a man hadn't just died before their eyes. You and Ansel slip away into a side street, your heart still racing. What happens to that merchant? You ask quietly. Ansel shrugs. Depends who paid the better coin. But if the Brotherhood wants him alive, he'll survive. You pass through the fish market on your way back, a dense, salty fog rolling in from the docks. Seagulls screech above, as fishmongers hack apart their morning catches. You can't help but notice how similar this feels to the Brotherhood itself. An endless butchering of victims, one after another, while life grinds on. When you return to the underground chambers, you're summoned to the briefing hall, a low, circular room where assignments are distributed. You sit cross-legged with other operatives, waiting in silence. Brother Gaul enters, clutching a small scroll. A new contract, he announces. He reads the target's name for local magistrate known for harsh taxes and rumoured corruption. The client remains anonymous, as always. You listen closely, but you're not assigned to the job. Instead, you're given something far less glamorous. Tailing. You'll shadow a moneylender for the next week, Gaul says. Note his habits, his contacts, nothing more. You nod. Information gathering may not be as flashy as assassinations, but it's the backbone of the Brotherhood's power. Historians still argue whether medieval assassins succeeded primarily because of their killing skills or because of their vast intelligence networks. You're starting to realize it's the latter. That night, you sit at the long communal table, eating your flavorless stew, when a fellow operative slides onto the bench beside you. His name is Tomas, a wiry man with darting eyes and a nervous energy that reminds you of a cornered rat. Your first tailing assignment? He asks. grinning. You nod cautiously. Don't get sloppy. Don't get too close. And for the love of shadows, never let your mark see your face twice. People remember faces. He leans in closer, dropping his voice. And watch your back. Some of the older brothers don't like new blood climbing too fast. You glance around the hall. The casual chatter suddenly feels sharper, like knives wrapped in silk. He's not wrong. The Brotherhood is as cutthroat inside its walls as it is outside. Later, as you prepare for sleep, Ensel appears again. You did well today, she says softly. You're learning, but remember, sometimes watching is more dangerous than killing. When you watch, you learn secrets, and secrets make you a threat. You nod, exhausted. As you lay back on your straw mat, you listen to the rhythmic drip of water from the ceiling, counting each drop like a crude lullaby. You don't know it yet, but tomorrow you'll learn just how dangerous secret-keeping really is. The following morning begins earlier than you'd prefer. The stone beneath your straw mat is still cold, and your eyes feel like sandpaper from too little sleep. But today marks the start of your tailing assignment, the not-so-glamorous side of assassin life that nobody sings ballads about. Ansel meets you near the narrow side tunnel that leads to one of the Brotherhood's many hidden exits. You'll follow him from a distance. Do not make contact. Do not improvise, she warns. The point is to observe. You're gathering threads for the web. You nod. What if he notices me? She gives you a sly smile. Then you've already failed. And if you fail badly enough, you won't have to worry about consequences. Someone else will handle it. A comforting thought, really. You make your way above ground, blending easily into the bustling morning streets. The city is waking, merchants opening shutters, apprentices scrubbing thresholds, and town criers shouting the latest decrees, most of which, as usual, involve new taxes or public floggings. The medieval charm never disappoints. Your mark today is Master Thelon, a moneylender with a reputation for squeezing every last coin from desperate tradesmen. You spot him quickly, bald, dressed in fine but practical wool robes, his plump fingers jingling with heavy rings that reflect his thriving business. 2 burly guards flank him, more for intimidation than actual protection. You trail him carefully, slipping between clusters of shoppers, pretending to examine baskets of apples or haggle with a fishmonger. Every few steps, you check your reflection in shop windows to ensure you're not being followed yourself. The Brotherhood teaches paranoia as both a survival skill and a professional courtesy. Master Thelon's routine is painfully predictable. First stop, the silk merchant's shop, where he collects a small leather pouch, likely loan payments. Next, a brief visit to a spice trader, followed by a slow circuit through the goldsmith quarter, chatting with craftsmen and scribes. Hours pass like this. Boring? Absolutely, but also vital. Historians still debate whether medieval intelligence gathering was truly this methodical, or whether later stories exaggerated the patience of these shadowy operatives. It's beginning to suspect the former. It's mostly long, tedious hours of watching people do nothing interesting. But boredom can be dangerous. Complacency invites mistakes. In the afternoon, Master Thelon takes an unexpected turn into a narrow lane, one not included in your briefing. The buildings here lean in close, casting deep shadows even in daylight. Your pulse quickens. Either he's visiting a new contact, or he suspects something. You stay further back, pausing briefly at a fruit stall to mask your movement. An old woman behind the stall eyes you suspiciously, but says nothing. You pretend to study a bruised pear. Then you see it. A younger man, dressed plainly but moving with practiced ease, falls into step behind Thelon. Too close to be random, too deliberate to be a coincidence. A second tale. You freeze for a moment, weighing your options. If you spook the other tale, he might confront Thelon. If you expose yourself, you'll blow your own cover. Ansel's voice echoes in your head. Sometimes watching is more dangerous than killing. You trail both men now, careful to stay even further behind. Thelon pauses outside a small stone chapel, an odd stop for a man of his reputation. The second tail hangs back, pretending to inspect a faded wall mural. You do the same, stepping into a recessed doorway. Thelon enters the chapel. The second man waits a beat, glances around, then slips inside as well. You exhale slowly. Whatever's happening in there, it's no simple prayer session. Historians still argue how deeply religious institutions were involved with underground networks like the Brotherhood. Some evidence suggests certain clergy members acted as informants, intermediaries, or even clients. Others claim these partnerships were rare exceptions. Right now, though, you're witnessing something that strongly favors the first theory. You wait. Minutes crawl by. You debate whether to approach the door and risk being seen, or remain where you are. Finally, both men emerge, separately. Thelon looks calm. The second man glances around warily, then vanishes into a side alley. You make a mental note of everything, the location, the timing, the faces. The Brotherhood will want all of it. As you begin your own quiet return, you take extra precautions, circling through several busy plazas, doubling back twice, and lingering in a crowded tavern just long enough to see if anyone follows. You spot no one. Satisfied, you descend through a hidden entrance near the old cemetery and slip back into the familiar underground gloom. Ansel meets you in the briefing chamber. Report. You lay out the day's events in detail, down to the fruit stall and bruised pear. She listens without interrupting, nodding occasionally. The chapel is new, she murmurs, and the second tale. Trained, you reply. Not Brotherhood. Likely a rival faction, she says, or one of the bishop's pets. That name again. You've heard enough whispered mentions of the bishop now to piece together his growing role in these affairs. Historians still debate whether certain medieval bishops wielded enough clandestine power to hire or even control assassins. Some suggest the church turned blind eyes when it served their interests. Others argue some clerics actively commanded their own deadly networks under a pious facade. Ansel changes the subject. Tomorrow, you'll follow the second tale. Your stomach sinks, one step closer to danger. But first, she adds with a mischievous glint, a different kind of test. You're led to a dim chamber lit by flickering oil lamps. A table awaits, lined with more of Brother Ivo's infamous disguise tools: wigs, pigments, false teeth, prosthetic scars. Blend into the fish market, Ansel orders. Spend an hour. If I spot you, you fail. You nod and get to work, transforming yourself into a hunched old fisherman, complete with a limp, heavy brow and a beard that itches like ants crawling across your skin. Within the hour, you're standing among real fishmongers, calling out prices in a cracked old voice. The stench is overpowering. Salt, rotting fish guts, sweat and wet wool. Medieval sanitation was never its strong suit, and the fish market proudly carries that tradition forward. You swat at flies and sell imaginary eels to invisible customers. Out of the corner of your eye, you spot Ansel weaving through the crowd, scanning faces. Your pulse quickens. You slouch lower, pretend to haggle with an actual customer who glares at you in confusion. Ansel passes by, her gaze sliding over you without pause. Success. Later, back underground, she offers a rare nod of approval. You're learning. But her next words chill you. Tomorrow will be harder. We're done playing games. You lie awake that night, staring at the rough stone ceiling again. The longer you stay in the Brotherhood, the clearer it becomes. Every success leads directly into greater danger. You're climbing a ladder with no safe rungs to rest on. And the fall? That's always waiting. Morning comes far too soon, as always. Today there's no small task, no safe market blending, no easy drills. Today, You're hunting the hunter. A position near the same chapel where you last saw the mysterious second tail. Thaelon isn't the target this time. The unknown operative is. Ansel's orders were clear. Follow him, learn his habits, and find out who he serves. But be invisible. If he senses you, it's not just failure, it's danger. The city feels different when you're tailing someone who knows how to vanish. Every shadow seems sharper, every movement more deliberate. The early morning fog clings to cobblestones as the market slowly awakens. Cloaked figures shuffle past, some legitimate, some not. The medieval city thrives on its own flavour of chaos, half business, half bacala schemes. You spot him near the fish market, standing idly beside a stall selling eels. The same plain cloak, same wide-brimmed hat. Calm, controlled. He's scanning the crowd, but not too obviously. A professional. You mimic his rhythm, staying far enough back to avoid notice, but close enough to avoid losing him in the morning bustle. You pretend to haggle over cheap onions, dip into side alleys, follow crowds when available. Every trick you've been taught. He moves through the merchant quarter, pausing occasionally at stalls. Each stop feels intentional, like he's marking something, but you can't decipher what. Then he turns sharply down an alley you don't recognize. Your heart picks up. The alley narrows, its high walls crowding overhead. The stench of refuse thickens as you press on. Somewhere nearby, a cat yowls. You keep to the shadows, footsteps silent. And then he stops. For a moment you think he's caught you. But no, he's meeting someone. A short exchange of words. You can't hear from this distance, but you see a small pouch change hands. The recipient, a cloaked figure even shorter than him, disappears quickly into another side alley. Who was that? A messenger? A contact? Historians still argue whether medieval rival guilds actively planted spies within each other's operations, or simply competed through freelance contractors. You're witnessing living proof that alliances in this world are messier than any chronicler could capture cleanly. Your target resumes walking. You follow again. An hour later, you watch him slip into a tavern near the docks, a low, dingy place that smells like bad ale and old sweat. The kind of place where secrets marinate. Now comes the hard part, close observation. You enter casually, blending with a group of sailors. You order a watered-down ale, though you barely touch it. Across the smoky room, your target takes a corner table, meeting a different contact. This one dressed like a merchant, but his stiff posture betrays military training. The two converse in low voices. You strain to hear fragments. People's timetable. Magistrate must fall first. Payment secured. That word again, bishop. It's becoming a recurring character in your nightmares. The merchant passes a rolled scroll beneath the table. Your target pockets it, then finishes his drink and leaves as casually as he entered. You debate your next move for a heartbeat before following. But as you step outside, the tension shifts. You feel it instantly, an invisible string snapping tight behind your ribs. Someone's watching you. You glance casually over your shoulder, nothing obvious, but there in the barrel stack, a flash of movement. Not your target, someone else. You've been made. Panic prickles up your spine, but you suppress it. Running would confirm everything. Instead, you take a calculated risk and dip into a side street, disappearing into the maze of alleys you've memorized during training. The footsteps behind you quicken. You zigzag, doubling back, sliding through tight corridors so narrow you have to turn sideways. The old city layout works to your advantage now. Crooked architecture, forgotten passageways, a confusing blend of dead ends and secret routes. The medieval design, built long before urban planners were a thing, creates a natural maze. You press yourself against a damp wall, breathing as shallowly as possible. The footsteps approach, pause, then move on, fading into the market's noise. You wait several minutes before slipping away, heart still hammering. Eventually, you return to the Brotherhood's safe house through a different entrance, extra cautious to ensure you weren't followed. Ansel is waiting. You are seen. You nod, ashamed. But I gathered information. You relay every detail. The meeting, the exchange scroll, the merchant's mention of the magistrate and the bishop. Ansel listens, nodding thoughtfully. Good. Risky, but useful. She rises and paces the stone floor, fingers steepled. So the bishop has contracts out on the magistrate, and he's using freelance agents to avoid implicating his own hands. The Brotherhood often operates in a grey zone of politics. Sometimes they eliminate targets for coin, other times for favours. But always they avoid entanglements with church authorities. Too many eyes, too much attention. A bishop wielding private agents? That complicates everything. Historians love to pretend the church stood morally above the political filth of this era, Ansel mutters. But reality is always messier. Then she fixes you with a rare, serious expression. You'll rest tonight. Tomorrow you won't be watching anymore. You'll be acting. You swallow hard. The safety net of observation has been cut. Later that evening, as you sit alone in the dim quarters, you catch whispered conversations nearby. The bishop's spies grow bolder. Gaul says the guildmaster fears exposure. Another recruit vanished last week. You shiver. Every day in the Brotherhood feels like sitting on a barrel of powder, while someone flicks lit matches nearby. You glance at your dagger lying beside you. Its polished steel catches the lamplight. Tomorrow, you might actually have to use it. Sleep, when it comes, is restless and short. The shadows seem thicker tonight, and they whisper louder. You barely sleep. The constant damp of the stone walls seeps into your bones, and your mind won't stop replaying the day's events. Every whispered word, every glance, every footstep behind you, it all blurs into one long knot of tension. By the time Ansel arrives to wake you, you're already sitting up, staring at nothing. She doesn't bother with pleasantries. Come. You follow her through a narrow, winding passage that leads even deeper beneath the city. The air here is colder, heavier. The torches burn lower, casting elongated shadows that flicker like reaching hands. You've never been in this part of the compound before, and you get the distinct sense that few recruits ever see it. Eventually, you enter a chamber unlike the others. Instead of damp stone, this room is lined with polished oak panels. A map of the city stretches across one wall, dotted with coloured pins. A heavy table sits in the centre, covered with scrolls and sealed letters. 3 high-ranking members sit behind it, their faces partially obscured by their cowls. Brother Goal speaks first. You've performed adequate. That's as close to praise as you'll get. We've received word, he continues, that the bishop's agent, your friend from the market, plans to move against the magistrate tomorrow night. But not directly. He's employing a decoy to create confusion. You listen carefully. This is your briefing, your first real assignment. Not observation, not drills. An actual job. You will intercept the decoy, Gaul says. Neutralize him quietly. Leave no witnesses. Neutralize, that polite Brotherhood euphemism for kill. The room is silent except for the soft scratch of a quill as one of the elders records something on parchment. You nod slowly. Yes, brother. Historians often debate whether assassin orders were issued by committees like this, or if power rested solely in the hands of charismatic guild leaders. The Brotherhood clearly favours bureaucracy. Murder, but with proper paperwork. Ansel escorts you to the armoury next. She hands you a small packet wrapped in oilskin. Poisoned pins, she explains. Quick, quiet, clean. You unfold the cloth. 5 slender needles glisten faintly under the torchlight. Dipped in nightshade, you assume. If delivered properly, 1 is enough. Your target will be posing as a merchant near the western docks, she continues. He's carrying false documents meant to draw attention away from the real assassination. Our client wants him removed before he can deliver them. You swallow hard. It's one thing to train with rats and dummies. It's another to stick a poisoned pin into a breathing man's neck. Relax, Ansel adds, almost kindly. The first is always the worst. Before you leave, she gives you one final piece of advice. If it feels too easy, it's probably a trap. The city is quiet when you emerge later that evening. The cool breeze off the harbour carries the familiar cocktail of brine, sewage, and damp wool. Your disguise tonight is that of a dock worker. Patched trousers, rough shirt, soot smeared on your cheeks. The docks are never entirely empty. Even after sunset, workers haul crates under flickering lanterns while sailors brawl over dice games. Somewhere nearby, a drunken lute player croons badly about lost love. You spot him quickly. The decoy stands near a warehouse, dressed as a cloth merchant, nervously fidgeting with a satchel slung over his shoulder. His behaviour screams amateur. He scans the crowd too often, shifts his weight too much. This isn't someone born to the shadows. This is someone who's been paid well, but trained poorly. Still, Ansel's warning echoes in your head. You circle closer, blending with a small group of stevedores unloading barrels. You watch for patterns, for guards, for eyes watching you. Nothing. At least nothing obvious. Finally, you close the distance. As you pass behind him, you stumble intentionally, your shoulder brushing his. In the same motion, your right hand delivers a quick jab under his collar. The pin sinks in, barely a pinch. He doesn't react. Yet. You mutter a crude apology in your best dockworker accent and continue walking. Within seconds, his knees buckle. He collapses to the ground, clutching his throat as the poison takes hold. No one notices. Or rather, no one wants to notice. Death is common here. A man falling ill after too much wine or bad fish barely warrants a second glance. You make your way back toward the safe house through side streets, hyper-aware of every shadow. But tonight, at least, you make it back undetected. Inside, Ansel waits. She doesn't ask if it's done. She simply studies your face. You nod once. It's done. She offers a brief, approving smile. Good. You've crossed the threshold now. You wonder if she means the threshold into the Brotherhood's trust, or simply into the cold fraternity of killers. Probably both. As you're dismissed, you catch snippets of conversation from another table. Bishop's next target is ambitious. He wants more than just the magistrate. If we don't act first, we'll lose control. You lie awake again, staring at the same uneven ceiling. You've killed a man, neatly, efficiently, without spectacle, and yet you feel no triumph, no satisfaction. Just hollow. Historians still argue whether these early assassins were driven by ideology, coin, or simply survival. Lying there on your straw mat, you understand that it's rarely one reason. It's all of them. And none. Your world has shrunk to one simple rule: kill or be killed. Everything else, the politics, the factions, the whispers of bishops and merchants, is noise around that one brutal truth. The Brotherhood whispers always, and tonight their voices feel especially heavy. You've barely had time to sit with your thoughts before the next assignment lands in your lap. There's no debrief, no congratulations, no reflection period where you're invited to meditate on the moral weight of what you've done. The Brotherhood doesn't offer that luxury. You're not here to feel, you're here to function. Ansel meets you at the entrance to the map chamber again. City work is one thing, she says quietly. Tonight you learn why urban contracts are easy. That's not reassuring. You follow her inside. The map laid across the table looks different now. Farmland, forests, winding roads. The city shrinks into a mere dot. Your target isn't in some bustling market or under the protection of city guards. He's hiding in the countryside. The client has requested the removal of a noble's steward, Gall explains. He's been leaking sensitive information to foreign merchants. Dangerous information. You scan the map. His estate lies deep in the woods, hours outside the city. No guards, no witnesses, and no backup. You'll be alone, Gall says simply. Rural hits, you've heard, are some of the worst. The isolation, the unpredictability, the animals. Historians debate whether medieval assassins operated much outside the cities at all. Some argue their skills were ill-suited for wild terrain, where there were fewer alleys to hide in and more wolves waiting behind every bush. But as always, historians write from safety. You're about to test their theories in person. You're outfitted with light gear for travel. A short blade, a compact crossbow, and another packet of those slender, poisoned pins. This time, though, you're also handed a small bundle of dried meat, hard cheese, and flatbread. Supplies for the journey. The Brotherhood rarely shows such forethought for comfort, so the gesture worries you more than it comforts you. Ansel gives you a long, serious look. The forest isn't our home. Trust your senses. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Night falls as you leave through a hidden passage leading beyond the city's southern wall. The moon hangs low and pale, barely strong enough to light your path. The road quickly turns from packed dirt to a narrow trail disappearing beneath a dense canopy of ancient trees. The forest breathes differently than the city. It creaks, rustles, whispers in ways that feel alive and hungry. The air smells of damp earth, moss, and distant wood smoke. Every crunch beneath your boots echoes louder than you'd like. Hours pass. Your mind plays tricks on you. Shapes dart in your peripheral vision, though you see nothing when you turn your head. Every owl hoot feels like a warning. Your fingers hover near your blade, knuckles tense. Finally, you spot the estate. A modest stone manor surrounded by a low wooden fence, flickering lanterns casting long shadows across the yard. The steward lives simply but comfortably. A single stable sits nearby, and faint candlelight glows behind heavy drapes on the second floor. You watch from the tree line for nearly an hour. No visible guards, no dogs, just one lone servant stepping briefly outside to dump a pail of waste into the woods before returning inside. Perfectly exposed. And yet, Ansel's warning gnaws at you. You scan the area again, and there it is. A glint of metal in the trees across from you. Someone else is here. You freeze. Another assassin? A local guard? Or perhaps someone hired by the steward himself? You wait, heart pounding. After several minutes, the shape moves. A man dressed in dark hunting leathers, crouched low, crossbow in hand. So it's not just you hunting tonight. Historians debate whether contracts like these were ever double-bid multiple assassins sent after the same target to ensure completion, or test the worth of competing factions. You're now part of that debate. The man moves closer to the manor. He hasn't seen you. You have options. You could wait, let him eliminate the steward and report back. That risks exposure if he fails, or worse, if he reports you as a loose end. Or you could act. You shift silently, creeping through the brush until you're behind him. His focus is fixed on the house. You're 10 paces away. 5. One poisoned pin slips easily into your hand. You lunge forward, quick and quiet, driving the pin into the base of his neck. He stiffens, tries to turn, but the toxin floods his bloodstream too fast. Within moments, he collapses silently into the leaves, eyes wide with surprise. Your breathing slows. Your pulse does not. Now back to your original task. You approach the manor, slipping over the fence like a shadow. A side window is cracked open. You ease it wider, slipping inside. The interior smells of beeswax and roasted meat. The steward sits at a heavy desk, poring over scrolls by candlelight. He's middle-aged, thin, with the hunched posture of a man who spent years hiding behind ledgers. You move quickly, crossing the room in near silence. He senses you a moment too late. He turns, mouth opening for a scream, but your blade presses against his throat before sound escapes. His eyes are wide with terror. "Please, please, I can pay," he whispers. You say nothing. You're not here for negotiations. Your blade sinks quickly into the soft flesh beneath his ear. A clean kill. He crumples without a sound. You search his desk briefly, collecting the damning documents he was planning to sell, then slip back out the window into the cold night. The forest feels different now. Heavier, quieter, the kind of silence that follows death. As you make your way back toward the city, dawn begins to break, filtering pale light through the treetops. The birds sing with cruel cheerfulness, unaware of the night's work. By the time you reach the hidden city entrance, your legs ache, your eyes sting, and the weight of what you've done sits heavy in your gut. Ansel greets you as you descend into the tunnel's shadows. 2 kills in one night, she says softly. You're advancing faster than most. You nod, too tired to respond. But fast isn't always safe, she adds, and the bishop's plans are growing bolder. You're not the only one watching. She leaves you to rest, but rest comes poorly. The Brotherhood may reward success, but it never grants safety. Not really. You close your eyes, listening once again to the endless drip of water in the distance. The forest might be behind you, but the true hunt is only beginning. Sleep eludes you, as always. The stone beneath you seems colder, heavier. The rhythmic drip of water, once a strange comfort, now grates at your fraying nerves. 2 kills in one night. It should feel like some sort of accomplishment. Instead, it feels like you're slowly drowning beneath invisible weight. You're summoned again. Not by Ansel this time, but by Gaul himself. That's never a good sign. His presence always carries the air of quiet threats and calculations. You follow him down yet another unfamiliar passage, this one tighter, with walls narrowing like the throat of some giant stone beast. "We're accelerating your training," he says flatly, not even glancing back at you. "Because we must." You've learned by now not to ask questions. The chamber you enter is unlike any you've seen in the Brotherhood's underground warren. A large circular room with high ceilings and walls covered in elaborate painted symbols. Candles flicker along the edges, their flames casting eerie patterns that seem to move when you blink. In the center stands a man you've only heard whispers about, the quartermaster known as Brother Halric. He oversees the Brotherhood's tools and tricks, the practical instruments of death. He's tall, thin as a scarecrow, and draped in a patchwork robe covered in stitched symbols. His eyes are sunken but alert, and his voice is surprisingly warm, which somehow makes him more unsettling. "Welcome," Halric says with a smile. "Time to see if you can adapt to variety." He gestures to several tables behind him, each one covered with the Brotherhood's assorted tools of persuasion, which is a polite way of saying torture devices. Iron thumbscrews, leather straps, wooden wedges, hot irons, pulleys and chains. You feel your stomach lurch. "We don't only kill," Halric continues, gently running a finger along a sharp hook. "Sometimes we need information. Sometimes the client doesn't want a corpse. And sometimes mercy isn't profitable." Historians continue to debate just how involved medieval assassins were in interrogation and torture. Some claim it was beneath their honor. Others argue that information was currency, and they were as skilled in extracting secrets as they were in spilling blood. Today, you're seeing which version of that history is real. "You won't practice on a person," Halric assures you, reading your expression. "Not yet. But you'll learn the techniques, the principles, the anatomy." He taps an old wooden mannequin painted with human organs, veins, and pressure points. "Pain isn't always about brutality. It's about precision." The lesson begins. You learn how nerves respond to pressure, how certain joints dislocate with minimal force, how pain travels unevenly through the body depending on angle and method. You practice carefully twisting wooden arms and legs on the mannequin, simulating what would happen to a real body. Too much force, Halric corrects, as you wrench an artificial shoulder. You snap bone. That kills too quickly. We want pliable minds, not corpses. Hours pass in this unsettling classroom. You work your way through finger joints, pressure points behind the ears, nerve clusters beneath the ribs. Every technique feels clinical, detached, mechanical. That makes it bearable. Almost. The room is quiet except for Halric's soft instructions and the occasional creak of leather straps tightening. You start to understand that for the Brotherhood, torture isn't sadism. It's simply another skill, a tool, like a dagger or poison. Finally, Halric dismisses you, and Gaul leads you back toward more familiar tunnels. His tone is almost conversational now. You think your task is simply killing, he says, but knowledge has greater value than death. Many of our clients pay not for corpses but for leverage. You nod, pretending to fully grasp the weight of that, but part of you understands. After all, information is what keeps this entire corrupt world turning. As you walk, you overhear snippets of hushed conversations echoing from nearby chambers. The bishop now has spies inside the merchant guild. Another informant lost near the southern trade route. Gaul suspects the bishop aims to turn the guild against us. The bishop again, always circling like a vulture. His name now carries weight in every whispered meeting, every nervous glance. Historians still debate whether church officials directly orchestrated such clandestine wars for power, or whether these secret rivalries were more localized, personal feuds masked by holy titles. Watching it unfold here, you suspect both can be true at once. That night, as you eat another bland meal of broth and black bread, Ansel joins you, her voice low. "You did well today," she says softly. Most vomit after their first session with Halric. "Do you manage a weak smile?" "I wanted to." "That's good." She sips from her mug. "Revulsion means you still have a soul. You'll need that, not for this work, but for yourself." You glance around the hall, studying the faces of your fellow assassins. Some look hollow, worn thin by the years. Others, especially the older ones, seem disturbingly calm, like whatever humanity they had has been boiled down to pure efficiency. Ansel's voice lowers to a near whisper. "The ones who stop feeling, they make excellent killers, but they don't last. The Brotherhood discards the broken." You chew on her words long after you return to your cell. Even as you close your eyes, the painted mannequin's twisted limbs haunt your thoughts. You've learned how to break bones today, how to snap joints, how to tear confessions from terrified mouths. But deep down, you know that the most fragile thing you'll ever break in this work isn't bone. It's yourself. The next morning brings a new kind of dread. Today is not about learning, or practice dummies, or theoretical lessons in anatomy. Today is about exposure. You're summoned to a smaller chamber, where Ansel and Gaul wait, joined by a man you've never seen before. An outsider. He's thin, sharp-eyed, wearing merchant's robes, but his posture betrays the confidence of someone used to danger. "This," Gaul says, "is Lord Venzar's courier. He serves as our client's intermediary. You'll accompany him today." You glance at Ansel, but she offers no hint of explanation. This assignment clearly sits above your clearance, and you're being brought in as an asset, not a partner. The courier speaks with a clipped accent. "The Merchant Guild suspects betrayal within its ranks. I require safe passage while delivering certain evidence. You're not being sent to kill, you're being sent to escort, and yet you know better than to assume this will be simple." Ansel leans in close as you prepare to leave. "This is a test of another kind. If you're discovered with him, you'll both die. If you fail to protect him, you'll die. Very simple. Simple. Right. You leave through a different exit this time, emerging into the bustling mid-morning streets dressed as minor traders. Your disguise. An assistant to the courier, responsible for carrying ledgers and bags of coin. No blades visible, though your dagger remains hidden inside your boot. The city hums with life. Market stalls spill over with fabrics, trinkets and spices. But beneath the lively surface, tension simmers. You see it in the way merchants glance nervously over their shoulders, how street guards linger longer than usual, how every loud voice draws flinches from nearby crowds. As you walk beside the courier, you watch for tales. The Brotherhood has drilled this into you for weeks now. Scan reflections in windows, catch unnatural pauses in movement, study angles. So far, the only people following you are merchants desperate to sell overpriced figs. But halfway through the route, it changes. Near the northern plaza, you spot him, the same operative you followed days ago, the bishop's agent. He leans casually against a pottery stall, pretending to admire ceramic bowls, but his gaze keeps drifting your way. You glance at the courier, who hasn't noticed, or pretends not to. Either way, you tighten your grip on the coin bag hanging from your shoulder. The bishop's man begins to follow, keeping a respectable distance. You subtly adjust your pace, maneuvering closer to busy vendors to complicate his line of sight. He adapts easily, slipping through gaps like water. Your heartbeat quickens. You're trained for this. Stay calm. Stay invisible. The courier leads you into the weaver's court, a small, enclosed plaza lined with fabric stalls and shaded archways. Fewer exits. Fewer witnesses. Not ideal. As you step deeper into the plaza, you sense movement behind you. Not just the bishop's operative now. 2 more men have appeared, both circling from opposite directions. No uniforms, plain clothes, professionals. It's a trap. The courier finally notices, his voice dropping to a nervous hiss. Friends of yours. Not mine. Your mind races. You're outnumbered. Fighting isn't an option, yet. But there's still one rule the Brotherhood drills into every operative. Confusion buys you time. You abruptly stumble forward, knocking over a stack of dyed wool bundles. Bright fabrics spill into the narrow space, creating a curtain of chaotic colour. Shouts erupt from startled vendors. The sudden burst of motion breaks the hunter's rhythm. You yank the courier by his sleeve, dragging him sideways into a narrow storage alley. He stumbles, but follows, breathing hard. Keep moving, you bark under your breath. The bishop's men recover quickly. You hear heavy boots pounding behind you. The alley twists sharply. Ahead, a small wooden gate locked. You draw your dagger, slipping the blade between the latch and prying it open. The courier squeezes through first. You follow, slamming the gate shut behind you. Now you're in the tannery quarter. A blessing and a curse. The stench of animal hides and boiling lye nearly makes you gag, but the thick, oily smoke conceals you from distant eyes. Workers scowl as you barrel past, but no one interferes. Tanners aren't paid to care about anything outside their vats. You lead the courier through narrow lanes, taking turns at random intervals to throw off pursuit. Only after several long minutes does the sound of pursuit finally fade. The courier sags against a wall, gasping. You, Brotherhood, you're efficient. You ignore the backhanded compliment. We're not safe yet. Historians argue whether these medieval secret societies operated with such daring in open daylight. Some claim their power was entirely in their stealth, while others believe they occasionally stepped boldly into public spaces when necessity demanded. Today, you've danced between both. Eventually, you circle back toward one of the Brotherhood's merchant safe houses, entering through a discreet side entrance beneath an unassuming bakery. Inside, Ansel is already waiting. Of course. Report, she says, barely glancing at the shaken courier. You recount every detail. The watchers, the ambush, the escape. She listens with growing concern. The bishop grows bolder, she mutters. To attempt an interception here, in our city, shows desperation. Or arrogance. The courier finally regains his breath. Your organization promised discretion, he snaps. You received it, Ansel replies coolly. You're alive. Your enemies are not. He falls silent. Once the courier departs, Ansel turns to you, her expression unreadable. You adapted. You kept your wits. That will keep you alive longer than any blade. You nod, too exhausted for anything else. Back in your chamber that night, you sit on the edge of your straw map, listening to the distant whispers echoing through the stone halls. Whispers of the bishop's growing network, of rising tensions, of more assignments waiting just around the corner. This is the world you've chosen, or, more honestly, the world that chose you. A world where even walking through a crowded market can turn into a deadly game of angles, mirrors, and improvised escapes. You close your eyes, your mind already running through escape routes you may need tomorrow. And the next day. And the next. Because in the Brotherhood, the city itself is never truly safe. You barely have time to rest before the next summons arrives. The messenger doesn't speak. He simply hands you a folded slip of parchment, marked with the Brotherhood sigil. A single black dagger. That's all it takes. You're up again, your muscles sore, but your mind alert. Ansel meets you in one of the briefing alcoves. The air is damp, carrying the familiar mix of wet stone and candle wax. She doesn't waste time. There's been a breach. You stiffen. A breach is one of the few things that genuinely rattle the Brotherhood. Mistakes are usually fatal long before they cause ripples. But when a breach occurs, it means someone from inside the shadows has decided to crawl toward the light. A brother has broken faith, she continues, sold information, names, locations. Her stomach knots. Betrayal from within, something you've heard whispered about since your first days here. Some historians claim that medieval assassin guilds were held together by iron loyalty, bound by sacred oaths. Others suggest they were riddled with paranoia, their ranks slowly devouring themselves from within. Now you know which version holds closer to the truth. A traitor. You ask softly. Brother Kern, she says, spitting the name like a sour fruit. He fled last night, likely thinking he can barter what he knows with the bishop. The bishop again. His web seems to stretch wider every day, catching more insects willing to trade loyalty for coin. Your mission is clear before Ansel even says the words. Eliminate Kern before he delivers his secrets. You're given a small map, a hastily sketched path leading toward an old monastery outside the city's western gate. That's his destination, the bishop's sanctuary. Ansel hands you a small leather pouch as well. Inside are 2 vials, one containing a thick, milky liquid, the other filled with fine grey powder. Contingencies, she says, which is Brotherhood code for poison and sabotage. Night has already fallen when you leave. The road west is quiet, the fields bathed in cold moonlight. Every rustling leaf sounds sharper out here, every creak of distant branches a possible threat. The countryside has its own language of dread. You follow the trail, your mind scanning through what you know about Kern. He wasn't much older than you, quiet, competent, good with locks. You shared meals with him not long ago, sat across from him as you both practiced slipping poisoned pins into dummies. And now? Now he's a liability. This work leaves no room for sentiment. The monastery comes into view just before dawn. It's modest. High stone walls, a small bell tower, and a thin curl of smoke rising from a chimney. Quiet. Peaceful. Almost beautiful, in a way that makes your task feel even colder. You circle carefully, watching from the tree line. You spot Kern quickly. He's pacing near the gate, speaking with a monk whose hood is pulled low. That's no monk, of course. You recognize him even from this distance. It's the bishop's agent, the same man who's been circling your assignments for weeks now. They're negotiating, probably discussing the price of betrayal. You move closer, sticking to the undergrowth. There are 2 guards stationed outside the monastery. Hired swords by the look of them, not proper soldiers. Lax, untrained, paid just enough to care, but not enough to be alert. You calculate your options. A direct attack is risky, even with their incompetence. You reach into your pouch, fingers curling around the small grey powder packet. The sabotage option. The monastery draws its water from a nearby well, set into the ground beside the gate. Perfect. You wait for an opening, and as one of the guards wanders off to relieve himself behind a nearby tree, you slip toward the well. A quick sprinkle of the powder into the bucket hanging there, and you vanish back into the shadows. The powder is not deadly, not immediately. It causes severe stomach cramping, weakness, confusion, enough to cripple the guards without alerting them to poison. The Brotherhood prefers subtlety over spectacle. You retreat back into hiding and wait. Within the hour, it begins. The guards start shifting uncomfortably, rubbing their stomachs. One doubles over, staggering toward the trees. The other drops his spear and vomits violently onto the gravel. Kern notices the commotion. He glances around, suddenly wary. Now, you slip from the trees like a whisper, crossing the open space swiftly. The bishop's agent notices movement too late. He reaches for his blade. But you're already on him, driving your dagger beneath his ribs in one clean, upward thrust. He exhales sharply, eyes wide, then collapses. Kern panics. "No, wait," he gasps, backing toward the monastery door. His voice trembles. "We can bargain. I can give you names. Valuable names." You keep advancing, your dagger slick with fresh blood. "I can tell you who's feeding the bishop information from inside," Kern pleads. "I know things even Gol doesn't know." That's his final mistake. You close the gap and drive the blade into his neck, silencing him instantly. His body slumps against the cold stone door. No speeches, no negotiations. The Brotherhood doesn't bargain with traitors. You scan quickly for any other threats. None. Just the twitching, sickened guards now lying helpless in the grass, groaning. You slip back into the woods, retracing your path toward the city. Historians still argue whether assassins truly operated with such ruthless internal discipline, or whether these tales of purging betrayal were later embellishments. But you know now, betrayal in the Brotherhood is answered swiftly and without hesitation, not because they're fanatics, but because loose tongues bring death to everyone. By the time you reach the underground compound, Gol is waiting. "It's done," he asks. You nod. "Good. We will investigate the bishop's network further." His reach is spreading faster than expected. He pauses, studying you closely. You've proven yourself adaptable, efficient, but understand this. His voice drops lower, more dangerous. The betrayal comes easier than loyalty. If you ever feel tempted, remember tonight. You nod again, colder this time. Later, as you sit in your chamber staring at your hands, you realize something has shifted. The hesitation you once felt is shrinking. Not gone, but shrinking. Killing Kern wasn't hard. It wasn't easy either. It was simply necessary. You are becoming exactly what the Brotherhood needs. And perhaps exactly what you feared. You expect a brief reprieve after eliminating Kern. The Brotherhood usually allows a small gap between assignments, if only to prevent mistakes born from exhaustion. But not this time. The tension inside the compound is thick enough to taste. Something is shifting. Ansel finds you early the next morning. She doesn't bother with her usual sarcasm. Instead, she leads you directly to the inner council chamber. deeper than you've ever been allowed before. The air grows colder as you descend, as if the weight of countless secrets hangs heavy in these lower halls. The candle-lit room you enter feels like a vault, its stone walls lined with locked cabinets and weathered scrolls. Only a handful of people occupy this space. Gaul, Halric, 3 others you've never seen before, their faces hidden beneath heavy hoods. Ansel speaks softly. This is the High Circle. You don't respond. You weren't invited here for pleasantries. Gaul speaks first. You've seen the bishop's hand growing bolder. His reach extends deeper into this city than even we anticipated. The hooded figure to Gaul's left leans forward slightly. His voice is soft, sharp as broken glass. The church has always had its informants, but this bishop seeks something more. He wants control of the entire guild structure. You feel your stomach twist. Even the Brotherhood, ruthless, secretive, and feared, can become prey. The bishop has found allies in certain merchant circles, Halric adds. They offer him coin, access, protection. In exchange, they expect to share in our removal, divide the spoils. Ansel's voice cuts through the heavy air, and he's using the church's shield to hide behind. Historians debate endlessly whether medieval churches directly involved themselves in criminal power plays like this. Officially, they were holy institutions. In practice, the lines blurred often enough to make chroniclers whisper carefully in dark corners. You listen as they lay out the growing web. Bribed merchants, corrupt guards, secret alliances stretching even into parts of the Brotherhood itself. Not full betrayal yet, but whispers. Seeds. The kind that grow into dangerous roots if left unchecked. Which brings us to your assignment. Gaul says finally. We've identified one of his handlers operating inside the cathedral. You blink. The cathedral. Ansel sees your reaction and explains. The bishop isn't a fool. He hides his dealings behind pious rituals. His handler masquerades as a humble scribe in the cathedral archives. Your task is clear. Infiltration, but this time not through secret tunnels or dark alleys. You're walking directly into the heart of one of the most guarded structures in the city, a place where the Brotherhood's reach has traditionally been weakest. You're handed a simple robe, modest, plain, the kind worn by visiting scribes or lower clerics, a hood to shade your face, a forged seal granting you temporary access to the archives as an assistant to one of the elder priests. The Brotherhood's forgers have been busy. Ansel walks with you as far as the outer tunnels. This won't be like the streets or the countryside, she warns. You're not invisible here. You're tolerated. Barely. Everyone watches. And they whisper to the bishop's ears. You nod, heart pounding. The cathedral looms large as you approach, its spires stabbing the sky like accusing fingers. Stained glass windows gleam in the morning sun, their colourful saints frozen mid-miracle. The bells toll as you cross the courtyard, each heavy note vibrating through your chest. Inside, the air changes, cooler, still, laced with the faint scent of incense and old stone. Choir voices echo faintly from a distant chamber. The faithful kneel before statues, whispering prayers you can barely hear. You present your forged papers to a stern-looking deacon. He barely glances at them before waving you inside, already distracted by other matters. Your hands remain steady, but your mind races. Every step echoes loudly under the vaulted ceiling. The archives sit deep within the cathedral, beyond the main chapel. Long rows of shelves hold scrolls and bound tomes, their edges frayed from centuries of use. Candles flicker along narrow aisles. You spot him quickly, the handler. A man of average build, his tonsured head bent over a ledger. His plain robes mark him as one of the many faithless scribes employed by the church. But his posture is too careful. His gaze shifts constantly, cataloguing the people around him. You pretend to study nearby scrolls, keeping your peripheral vision trained on him. Hours pass like this. Silent observation beneath vaulted stone, broken only by the soft scratching of quills and the occasional murmur of clerics. Historians argue whether these religious sanctuaries were truly respected sanctuaries or just another stage for political games. Today, you're watching those games unfold beneath painted angels and carved saints. Eventually, the scribe rises and quietly slips through a side door, one reserved for senior clergy. You follow at a cautious distance, remaining in character a lowly assistant, clutching your bundle of fake documents. The side corridor winds into narrower chambers, rarely visited by the public, dimly lit, filled with crates of old records and church relics. Here, the scribe meets another man, dressed richly, though not in clerical garb, likely a merchant. You hear only snippets as they whisper. The magistrate already softened. Coin flows freely now. The bishop will not tolerate delays. The scribe passes a sealed letter to the merchant, who tucks it quickly into his robe. A contract, a list, evidence. You shift your weight slightly, readying yourself. You weren't sent merely to observe. This isn't reconnaissance. It's removal. As the merchant departs through one corridor, the scribe turns toward another door. You act. Stepping silently behind him, you strike fast, a sharp jab with a poisoned pin to the base of his skull. He stiffens, stumbles forward, and crumples silently against a crate. No cry, no struggle, just an exhale that fades into silence. You work quickly, dragging his body into a nearby storage alcove behind stacked ledgers. He'll be found eventually. Tomorrow, maybe, but not before the trail grows cold. You slip out through a different exit entirely, blending into a group of pilgrims leaving evening mass. The Brotherhood's safe house feels smaller when you return, its candlelight too dim, its walls pressing closer. Ansel waits, as always. "Clean?" she asks. "Clean." She nods, but her expression stays tight. The bishop will respond. And you know she's right. You've poked a hornet's nest inside his own house of worship. There's no walking away now. Later, lying awake once more, you stare at the damp ceiling. The painted saints from the cathedral flicker in your mind, silent observers of sin, wrapped in piety. Even in holy places, the Brotherhood's shadow stretches. But so does the bishop's. The retaliation comes faster than anyone expects. You're in the main chamber when it happens, a place that should feel safe by now. The torches burn low, casting soft light on the familiar faces of your fellow assassins, some playing dice, some cleaning blades, some whispering over contracts, the usual murmur of the Brotherhood's daily rhythm, until the explosion. The blast rattles the stone walls, sending a shockwave of dust and smoke through the tunnels. The ground heaves beneath you. Cries of alarm echo down every corridor. You're thrown sideways, slamming into the cold stone wall as chunks of debris rain down. Disoriented, ears ringing, you scramble to your feet. The air is thick with soot, the acrid stench of burning oil filling your lungs. Shadows dart through the smoke, some Brotherhood, some you can't identify. Ansel appears through the haze, grabbing your arm. "Move," she barks, the secondary breach. You stumble forward, vision swimming, half blinded by smoke. You hear the clash of steel now, swords striking, grunts of pain, intruders. Inside your sanctum. Historians often romanticize these secret guilds as impenetrable fortresses, untouched by outside forces. But the truth? No walls are absolute. Every stronghold can fall if the enemy is bold enough, or desperate enough. The bishop has made his move. You rush into one of the side corridors with Ansel leading, cutting through a narrow passage you've never used before. The Brotherhood's tunnels are a web of contingency routes, designed for escape, not comfort. They knew the layout. Ansel growls between breaths. They had help. An informant, one of your own. someone who led the bishop's men directly into the compound. The thought churns your stomach. Ahead, you spot a pair of intruders blocking the passage. Mercenaries, hired muscle, not trained assassins. That's your only advantage. You draw your dagger low, staying in Ansel's shadow as she engages. The first man lunges at her with a heavy broadsword, telegraphing his strike like a street brawler. She slips past his swing and drives his blade beneath his chin before he can correct. Blood splatters across the narrow wall as he gurgles and drops. The second freezes just long enough for you to move. You thrust upward, your dagger sliding between his ribs. He stares at you wide-eyed for a moment, then slumps to the ground. "Keep moving," Ansel shouts. "We're not out yet." You push deeper into the secondary tunnels, the air cooler here, the sounds of battle slowly fading behind you. Only when you reach one of the concealed emergency exits, a false wall behind an old sewer grate, do you pause to catch your breath. Outside, the city feels surreal in its calm. Merchants haggle, children play, guards patrol as if nothing's wrong, as if a secret war isn't unfolding beneath their feet. "We regroup at the southern safe house," Ansel says quickly. "Gal will meet us there." As you slip through the winding streets, your mind races. The bishop struck hard. Brazen. This isn't the slow, careful chess game you've been playing. This is open war. When you reach the southern safe house, a modest building above a tannery, you find several Brotherhood members already there. Some wounded, bandaged hastily, others pacing, eyes dark with fury. Ghoul stands in the center, his expression colder than you've ever seen. "They knew everything," one of the senior brothers growls. "The layout, our guards, our schedules, every route." "Not everything," Ghoul replies calmly, "or none of us would be here." Ansel pulls you aside while the others argue. "This is where it shifts," she says softly. "The Brotherhood isn't about shadows anymore. The bishop forced us into daylight." You stare at her. Is that even possible? She gives a humorless smile. Everything is possible when desperation grows larger than fear. The door creaks open. A courier arrives, panting, holding a blood-stained satchel. He spills its contents onto the table, documents, sealed letters, and a single ornate ring. "The merchant guilds are fracturing," Ghoul says, scanning the papers. "Some back the bishop now. Some wait to see who wins." This is no longer simply about survival. It's about territory, influence, control of not just secrets, but the very arteries of the city's wealth. Historians debate whether medieval assassins ever became this deeply entangled with local economics, or if their influence remained purely mercenary. But here, you see the blurred lines in full color. The Brotherhood controls information. The merchants control coin. And the bishop, he wants both. Ansel turns to you again. "You've proven yourself adaptable, and you haven't broken. That's why you're coming with me." "Where?" you ask. "To the Guild Council," she answers. "Tonight." Your stomach tightens. You've heard about these meetings. A neutral ground where rival powers negotiate behind closed doors. Officially, they're civil. In practice, they're dangerous theatres of veiled threats and unspoken bribes. "We need to secure allies," Ansel explains, "before the bishop secures them all." You spend the rest of the day preparing, reviewing names, faces, alliances. The Merchant Guild is not unified. Some families have quietly used Brotherhood services for years. Others see you as an infestation. Every word tonight could shift that balance. When night falls, you enter the council chamber with Ansel through a discreet side door. The hall is grand vaulted ceilings, carved wood, gold leaf lining the walls. Wealth whispers from every corner. The guild leaders sit around a long table, each surrounded by assistants and guards. Robes of deep colours, rings heavy with gemstones, eyes that gleam like polished steel. and at the far end sits one new face, a representative of the bishop. Not the bishop himself, of course, but close enough. His presence turns every greeting stiff, every smile tight. The discussion begins civilly enough. Trade routes, tax disputes, market prices. But beneath it all, you feel the undercurrent. Loyalty is shifting, lines are being drawn. When the conversation finally touches on the Brotherhood, the room sharpens. One merchant speaks first. The Brotherhood has served the city for decades, discreetly. Another sneers. They've also drained us, controlled us, played kingmaker from the shadows. Perhaps it's time for transparency. The bishop's envoy smiles faintly, but says nothing. He doesn't need to speak. His presence alone applies pressure. Ansel finally rises. Her voice is calm, but each word carries weight. Without us, you'll have no secrets left to trade, no balance of power, and once you hand full control to the bishop's men, you'll discover how little they value merchants who no longer serve a purpose. A heavy silence follows. Eyes shift nervously, calculations churn behind every measured stare. The city's future hangs on invisible scales, and you stand at the very edge of those scales, realizing fully, for the first time, that this game was never just about blades and poisons. It's always been about control. The council breaks after midnight, but nothing feels resolved. The merchants leave in small clusters, whispering under their breath as their guards escort them into waiting carriages. The bishop's envoy lingers a moment longer, his gaze sweeping the room like a spider sizing up a web it's about to claim. Then he too vanishes into the night. You and Ansel remain seated as the doors close. The hall feels cavernous now, the silence pressing down like heavy wool. "We bought time," Ansel says quietly. "Nothing more." You nod. Every merchant in that room just calculated which side offers the safest future. The Brotherhood's services are valuable, but the bishop promises a world with fewer shadows, where power consolidates under a holy banner. To men who trade in ledgers and contracts, that kind of stability can be very attractive. As you leave the council hall, Gal waits for you outside. He speaks softly, as if the very night is listening. "Some will side with us. Others have already shifted." His eyes narrow. "But one merchant master, Calvin, has offered us something more valuable than coin." Calvin. You recognize the name. A wealthy trader who's quietly employed Brotherhood services for years. Smuggling, sabotage, political favors. But always from a safe distance, always with layers of deniability. He knows where the bishop's network is rooted. Gaul continues. Not just the agents we've encountered, but his financial artery. Ansel's voice lowers. A safe house, hidden beneath the bishop's private chapel. You blink. That's bold even for the bishop, using sacred ground as cover for treason. Historians often debate whether church leaders abused their sanctuaries so openly, or whether such claims were later fabrications used to justify political purges. Tonight, you see the truth for yourself. The plan comes swiftly. You won't simply strike the bishop's men. You'll cut the artery, cripple the operation before it can recover. 3 days, Gaul says. Prepare. The next nights are filled with strategy. You study floor plans sketched hastily by Calvin's informants. Secret stairwells hidden behind altars. Private prayer chambers concealing trapdoors. Routines of guards who believe they're untouchable inside holy walls. Ansel leads your small team, 6 operatives in total. Veterans. You're the youngest among them, but no longer treated like a recruit. You've earned your place at the table. You'll take the upper vault, Ansel instructs you. Intercept anyone fleeing through the northern stair. You nod. The mission is surgical. Quick, one strike. When the night arrives, the city is quiet, wrapped in fog. Even the moon hides behind thick clouds, as if reluctant to witness what's about to unfold. You approach the chapel from the rear, an ancient stone structure dwarfed by the larger cathedral complex nearby. The main doors are locked, but your team doesn't need them. A narrow drainage culvert provides your entry. Inside, the air is heavy with incense, the scent mingling with damp stone and centuries of candle wax. Faint chanting echoes from somewhere above. A late-night vigil, unaware. Your group splits, each member slipping into position with the ease of years spent navigating tighter, deadlier spaces than this. The Brotherhood lives in confined darkness. This is familiar ground. You ascend the hidden stair behind the altar, your boots silent against the worn stone steps. At the top, a narrow passage leads into the vault chamber, a private archive, where the bishop's agents gather to coordinate shipments of coin, contracts, and blackmail ledgers. 2 guards stand at the door, not mercenaries this time, church soldiers, better trained, more dangerous. You study their rhythm, how they shift their weight, how often they glance at one another. Then you strike. Your first blade finds the nearest man's throat before he fully registers your approach. The second reaches for his sword, but you're already inside his guard, driving your knee into his stomach, then your dagger under his chin as he folds forward. Both collapse soundlessly. You slip into the vault chamber. Scrolls line the walls. Sealed crates stacked neatly in rows. Gold gleams faintly from open ledgers, where bribes are meticulously recorded alongside names. Many you recognize, some you wish you didn't. You hear muffled cries from deeper within Ansel's team dealing with other occupants. The plan is unfolding perfectly. But as you begin gathering documents, another door creaks open. The bishop's envoy. The same man who sat at the merchant council, so calm, so sure of his position. He freezes when he sees you, shock flashing across his face, quickly buried beneath thinly veiled contempt. You people, he hisses, cling to shadows while the world evolves without you. You don't answer. You step forward. He draws a thin blade, a dueling sword, elegant, clearly not ceremonial. He's not entirely untrained. The first exchange is fast. His reach is longer, but you're quicker. His strikes come with confidence, yours with necessity. Steel whispers as it slides through damp air. He lunges too eager. You sidestep, letting his momentum carry him forward. Your blade finds the gap beneath his ribs, slicing cleanly upward. He gasps, eyes wide, mouth twitching as if to form one last clever insult that never arrives. He sinks slowly to the stone floor, crimson pooling beneath him. The vault is yours. Minutes later, Ansel rejoins you, her own team successful. It's done, you say. She surveys the scrolls, the crates, the quiet corpses. No, she corrects softly. Now it begins. The bishop has been wounded, not slain. His network crippled, but not erased. Retaliation will come. It always does. Historians often speak of power struggles as single events. A battle won, a king deposed, a church humbled. But in truth, power bleeds slowly. It clings, it adapts. As you stand in that vaulted chamber, watching Ansel mark crates for extraction, you realize this war will not end with tonight. The shadows have shifted, but they still move, and you must keep moving with them. The crates are gone by dawn, smuggled out through a series of safe houses and dead drops, just as the Brotherhood always operates. No single route, no single point of failure. You and Ansel watch the final shipment vanish into the misty streets before slipping back underground. The vault strike was a success, but no one celebrates. The air inside the Brotherhood feels different now. Tighter. There's no chatter at mealtimes, no quiet gambling over worn dice, no playful insults among the newer recruits. Only heavy silences and furtive glances. because everyone knows what comes next won't be quiet. For days, you're confined to the main compound, waiting. The usual drills continue, training with blades, lockpicking, signal code refreshers, but the tension seeps into every movement. Even the veterans grow more rigid, more watchful. You feel it growing inside you too, that knot of restless anticipation that comes before something breaks. Ansel joins you one night in the central chamber. She sits across from you, silent for a long moment before speaking. "There was a time," she says softly, "when this life felt like control, like power. We moved unseen, whispered commands that shifted entire courts, toppled nobles without anyone knowing who gave the order." You say nothing. Her voice has grown heavier over the weeks. But now, she shakes her head. Now it feels like we're reacting, chasing their moves. You finally ask the question you've carried for weeks. What does the bishop want, really? Her eyes find yours in the dim candlelight. The same thing everyone wants. Control. Not just of coin, not just of contracts, of everything. The bishop isn't satisfied with his pulpit. He wants to dictate what happens behind every door, in every guild, in every whispered negotiation. He wants to become the spider at the center of every web. You feel the weight of it settle deeper inside your chest. The Brotherhood thrives in the gaps between powers, balancing factions, selling influence like merchants sell grain. If one man consolidates all of it, there's no more balance, no more need for shadows. They'd rather burn us out than negotiate, Ansel finishes. And that's when you hear it. A soft knock. 3 quick raps followed by 2 slow soundings from one of the secret entrances. A Brotherhood signal. But no one moves, because there's another knock immediately after. Off rhythm. Wrong. Everyone freezes. The doors burst open before the guards can react. Smoke bombs flood the chamber, thick choking clouds swirling with burning herbs designed to disorient. Through the haze, shadows dart forward. Not mercenaries this time, trained men, disciplined. The bishop's soldiers. Historians love to debate whether medieval religious orders ever fielded private military forces beyond the official crusading banners. Tonight, you're watching proof that yes, they most certainly did. Steel clashes. Shouts echo. You draw your blade, throat burning from the smoke. Ansel is already moving, her knife flashing through the haze. "Fall back," she screams. "Third corridor." You stumble after her, slashing blindly at one soldier who lunges through the smoke, catching him across the shoulder. He drops, but another steps over him. There are too many. You're herded down narrower tunnels, deeper into the old sections of the Brotherhood compound areas rarely used, some half-collapsed and damp with centuries of mould. These passages were designed for one purpose: escape. The remaining Brotherhood members form a tight cluster as you press through a low crawl space. Gaul leads from the front, Ansel at his side. The few recruits who survive stumble behind you, coughing. "We can't stay here," Gaul hisses. "They'll find the lower routes soon enough." "They knew exactly where to strike," Ansel growls. "Someone led them here." Another informant. You don't ask who. Everyone's thinking the same thing. Finally, you emerge into a forgotten exit beneath an old wine merchant's cellar. A heavy stone slab conceals it perfectly once closed. Safe for now. But as you settle in the cold cellar, trying to catch your breath, you feel something shift inside you. It's not fear, not entirely. It's something sharper, more personal. The Brotherhood is bleeding. And now you understand the loneliness that Ansel always carried behind her sardonic smirk. You chose this life. But now, the life you chose is crumbling around you. Gaul gathers everyone in the cramped space. His voice is steady, but his eyes burn. The bishop thinks this will break us, that driving us into the gutters will end our influence. But his soldiers made one mistake tonight. You listen, leaning in. They left survivors. Ansel adds, and survivors carry teeth. Gaul outlines the plan. You won't fight this war from safe houses or tunnels anymore. The Brotherhood will fracture, small cells, spreading into neighbouring regions. You'll sabotage the bishop's alliances, target his informants one by one, unravel his web from the outside. Not a war of blades, a war of whispers. Historians call it death by 1,000 cuts. And your task? You've been assigned one of the first cuts. A merchant named Eldrin has shifted fully to the bishop's camp, Gaul explains. He launders coin through his trade caravans, quietly funding their network. You nod. Remove him? Eventually, Gaul answers, but first cripple his business, make him vulnerable. The target is clever. Instead of assassinating Eldrin outright, your mission is to destabilize him, to poison deals, sabotage shipments, seed false rumors, force him into reckless moves. Then, when he's desperate, you strike. It's not glamorous work. It's not clean. But this, you're learning, is how power really shifts. Quiet erosion, patient dismantling. The Brotherhood's war has entered a new phase. As you prepare your gear for the mission ahead, Ansel lingers beside you. Her voice drops to barely a whisper. You're not a recruit anymore. You meet her eyes, exhausted but resolute. I know. Because tonight, there's no training exercise waiting. No lecture. No safety net. Only the long, slow unravelling of power. And you are now one of its sharpened threads. The next few weeks blur together like damp ink on old parchment. You move constantly, never sleeping in the same place twice. The Brotherhood no longer operates as one solid entity, but as a scattered network of cells, small, mobile, and dangerously motivated. Your target, Eldrin, conducts his business out in the open, flaunting the bishop's protection like a gleaming shield. His caravans roll in and out of the city gates with little interference, guards doubling their ranks, and his name whispered with a mixture of fear and admiration among the merchant class. But the Brotherhood doesn't confront openly. That's not your way. Not anymore. Your orders are clear. Destabilize him. Strip him of allies. Make him weak before the final strike. It starts with whispers. You and Ansel meet with merchants still loyal, or at least cautious. You feed them information, carefully crafted rumours about Eldrin's shady dealings, hinting at fraud, counterfeit weights, debts unpaid to foreign lenders. Not enough to incite open rebellion, but enough to turn heads and plant doubt. Merchants, after all, are always more afraid of losing coin than losing face. Next, you sabotage his shipments. One moonless night, you intercept a caravan outside the southern gate posing as local bandits rather than assassins. You slip into their camp as they rest, pouring oil into flour barrels, spoiling salted meats with foul herbs, slashing seams in tightly packed fabric rolls. When the caravan arrives in the city days later, its goods are useless. The merchants who expected fine silks receive bundles crawling with mould and rot. Eldrin's reputation takes its first real wound. But he adapts. These men always do. He doubles his guards, bribes local officials for protection, leverages the bishop's name more aggressively. His presence at the merchant councils grows louder, more confrontational. And yet, behind his bluster you see it, the tiny cracks, the nerves he tries to mask. Historians sometimes paint medieval power struggles as grand, sweeping battles between armies. But more often, they were won through the small, methodical acts that shifted public trust and emptied ledgers before a blade was ever drawn. After weeks of pressure, you move into Phase 2, isolation. Eldrin's chief bookkeeper, a cautious man named Moret, is your next focus. Moret knows where every coin flows, every debt, every secret ledger. He's the real spine of Eldrin's operation. Ansel assigns you to tail him. You observe his routes, his habits, Morning prayers at the cathedral, lunch at the same dockside tavern, nightly returns to a modest estate, guarded lightly, too lightly. One rainy evening, you slip into the estate's outer courtyard, disguised as a drenched courier. The guards barely glance at you, more concerned with avoiding the cold. The delivery of forged invoice lands directly in Morit's hands. The fake invoice implicates Eldrin in a fraudulent timber deal with a powerful Northern Guild one known for swift, violent retaliation against dishonesty. When Morit reads it, his face pales. You follow closely over the next few days as the pressure mounts. Moret grows jumpy, snapping at servants, sweating through council meetings. Finally, as expected, he arranges a private meeting, secretly seeking the Brotherhood's protection in exchange for his loyalty. You're there, waiting in the shadows of an abandoned storehouse where the meeting is arranged. Moret arrives alone, hood pulled low, clutching a leather satchel filled with ledgers. The ledgers you need. I want out, he whispers, voice shaking. I can give you everything. Names, shipments, accounts, even the bishop's payouts. Ansel steps from the shadows beside you. Then speak. He does, and with every word, Eldrin's carefully constructed empire crumbles. Within a week, his creditors pool support. Rival merchants circle like vultures. The bishop's soldiers distance themselves, unwilling to risk exposure now that evidence ties his network directly to smuggling, bribery, and embezzlement. Eldrin grows desperate, and desperation makes men reckless. He calls a council meeting. Public, loud, demanding an inquiry into the Brotherhood's existence, calling for full cooperation with the bishop's forces to restore order. Ansel watches it unfold from a shadowed balcony. She doesn't even try to hide her smirk. He's making the final mistake, she whispers, drawing attention, forcing hands. Bishop hates attention. Indeed, 2 nights later, word spreads quietly. Eldrin has been found dead in his estate. No blade wounds, no blood, just a man slumped at his desk, eyes wide, lips tinged faintly blue. Poison. Not your hand, not Ansel's, not even Gaul's. This was the bishop's doing, cutting loose a liability before Eldrin could expose more. That's the difference between us and them, Ansel says softly as you observe the quiet funeral procession days later. They eat their own to survive. We simply finish what they start. The Brotherhood survives the purge. Scarred, yes. Smaller, more cautious, but alive. The bishop? He's wounded too, his inner circle fractured, his networks exposed. His soldiers remain, but his web of influence shrinks back into more guarded walls. For now. Historians often claim such conflicts have clear endings, victories etched in neat lines across yellowed scrolls. But here, as you return once again to the deeper chambers of the Brotherhood, you know better. There is no final victory, only the constant shifting of shadows. And you? You've shifted fully into one of them. You're now part of the quiet machinery that decides which names rise and which are whispered only after death. The city feels different now. Not safer, never safer, but quieter. The bishop's men are less visible. The merchants speak in more careful tones. The Brotherhood has shrunk, like a coiled serpent, wounded but still deadly. Fewer members, tighter circles, the weaker links cut loose or eliminated. You walk the streets sometimes, blending among the common folk, listening. The whispers remain, but their tones have shifted. Fewer speak of the Brotherhood's downfall. More speak of a stalemate, an uneasy balance hanging by threads of secrecy, coin, and fear. Ansel finds you one evening at one of the temporary safe houses. She doesn't speak at first, just pours 2 cups of thin, bitter wine, handing you one. You've lasted longer than most, she finally says. Longer than I expected. You half smile. Encouraging. She chuckles softly. There's a weight beneath her humour now, one you've learned to recognize. exhaustion, weariness, and something close to resignation. Most who come through those tunnels burn out by now, she continues. They either grow too hungry for power and get careless, or they try to leave. And well, she trails off, letting the unspoken end hang heavy. Leaving isn't allowed. You've always known that. Historians like to debate whether such strict codes were real or exaggerated to romanticize the loyalty of these secret orders. But you live it. The Brotherhood isn't a guild you serve, it's a skin you wear, one that's sewn on tighter with every kill, every secret carried, every compromise made. Ansel studies you for a long moment. Do you regret it yet? You think about it. The endless nights, the blood on your hands, the faces of men you've silenced forever. No, you say softly, not yet. She nods, satisfied. Then you'll survive. The next weeks blur into a rhythm you know too well now. New targets, smaller operations, careful strikes against the bishop's lingering informants. No grand moves, just the quiet, methodical work of dismantling networks, one thread at a time. The bishop remains in power, but his reach has shortened. He no longer moves as boldly. His council shrinks. His public appearances become rare. You hear rumours that he's begun turning inward, cleansing his own circle, growing increasingly paranoid of the very men who helped build his network. That's always how it ends for men like him, Gaul mutters one evening. Their webs collapse inward. The loyal grow afraid. The opportunists flee. The shadows reclaim what they once owned. And yet, even now, the Brotherhood doesn't celebrate. Because you all understand. New enemies will rise. Always. A powerful merchant's son whispers about reorganizing trade guilds. A foreign envoy eyes the city's weaknesses with ambition. Rumours of a splinter faction assassins who believe the Brotherhood has grown soft begin to circulate. It never ends. Historians sometimes wonder how these shadow networks could endure for centuries. The answer isn't strength, it's flexibility, adaptation. The Brotherhood doesn't win by crushing its enemies. It survives by outlasting them. And you've become part of that survival now. Ansel offers you a new chamber deeper in the compound. Not a recruit cell, but one reserved for operatives trusted with higher contracts. A promotion, not spoken aloud, but clear. As you unpack your sparse belongings, your worn cloak, your carefully maintained blades, a few coded scrolls, you pause for a moment, staring at the rough stone walls. The same cold, damp silence you once feared now feels familiar, comfortable. In a way, you've found your place here, in the spaces between loyalty and treachery, between violence and patience, between truth and whispers. You've learned how to wait, how to disappear, how to strike without hesitation. And most dangerously of all, you've learned how to feel nothing when you do. Ansel visits one last time that evening, standing in the doorway. Gal says you're ready for the higher circles, she says. You've earned your place. You nod. You feel no pride, no thrill, just the calm, steady acceptance that this is who you are now. Sleep, she adds. Tomorrow your name goes into the contract vault. You lie back on your mat, listening to the faint, distant echoes of dripping water. The same sound that greeted you on your first day. Except now, it's not a warning. It's a lullaby. You close your eyes, breathing slowly, the flickering torchlight dimming behind your eyelids. The city above continues, ignorant of the quiet war still unfolding beneath its streets. The shadows remain, and so do you. The stone walls grow softer now, their cold touch fading as your breathing slows. The distant dripping water echoes gently, like rain tapping lightly against a window in the night. You feel the weight of the cloak still draped over you, but even that heaviness seems lighter, almost comforting now. Above you, the city sleeps. The merchants, the nobles, the guild masters, all drifting in their own fragile dreams, unaware of the quiet hands that shape their futures beneath them. The flicker of torchlight fades slowly, as though the very flame knows it's time to dim. The echoes of whispered plans, of blades unsheathed, of coins exchanged, all soften into a distant human. Just a hum, gentle, quiet. You let your eyes drift deeper into that soft darkness, where the Brotherhood's work becomes someone else's burden, far away from you now. The weight of choices, press of danger, even the bishop's name, all dissolve into nothing but silence. And with every breath, that silence stretches wider, softer, like sinking into warm waters where nothing stirs and nothing wakes. The cold stone beneath you becomes distant. The candle smoke fades. The chambers recede into shadows. Just stillness now. Gentle, weightless stillness. The story ends here. Close your eyes. Drift deep. Sweet dreams.